Airbus transports the different parts of its aircrafts using a huge cargo plane called Beluga. This special airplane is designed only for carrying large and heavy components from one place to another. But just imagine, when it comes to the Airbus A380, the biggest passenger plane in the world, the challenge becomes almost impossible. The sections of this airplane are so massive that no cargo plane in the world is able to carry them. Until today there has never been a plane that could fit the gigantic pieces of this flying palace inside it. So the big question is, how do the parts of the A380, which are manufactured in many different places across Europe, reach the main Airbus assembly line in Toulouse, France? Airbus is a European aircraft manufacturing company that delivers around 1,000 airplanes every year to airlines across the globe. If you calculate that, it comes to 3 airplanes completed every single day. To maintain such a pace, Airbus has to produce, transport, and assemble aircraft parts continuously without delays. It sounds unbelievable, but it has become their daily challenge. How these planes are actually built is another story on its own, but one of the most complex parts of the process is how these huge sections, made in different corners of Europe, are brought together to Toulouse. Airbus has developed a logistics system that connects sea, river, land, and air routes, and it is considered one of the most complicated transportation networks in the world. Different parts are manufactured in different countries and later joined to form one complete airplane. This entire process is not a small achievement but the result of decades of engineering and detailed planning in logistics. Back in the 1960s, big European countries like France, Germany, Spain, and the United Kingdom decided to join hands with a new dream. They wanted to compete with Boeing, the American aircraft manufacturing giant. Their main aim was to build an alliance capable of producing large commercial aircrafts. But this partnership faced one major issue. Airbus had 11 production sites spread across Europe. Every site had its own expertise and was responsible for manufacturing specific sections of the aircraft. For example, in Hamburg, Germany, the tail sections were made. In Saint-Nazaire, France, the central fuselage and the nose section were produced. In Broughton, England, the wings were manufactured, and in Cadiz, Spain, another tail assembly plant was set up. When all these different factories completed their parts, the real challenge began. These football field-sized sections had to be transported to Toulouse, the location of Airbus's main assembly unit. At the beginning, when Airbus was producing fewer planes, they used trucks and ships to move the parts. But this was a very slow process and sometimes it took months for the parts to reach their destination. As demand increased, waiting months for delivery started to slow down the growth of the company. Especially when Airbus had to deliver 3 planes every single day, time became their biggest enemy. To solve this issue, Airbus came up with an extraordinary solution. In the Arctic Ocean lives a whale whose voice sounds almost like a song. This whale is called the beluga whale. In 1994, Airbus engineers took inspiration from the shape of this whale and created a new cargo plane, which they also named Beluga. The purpose of this new plane was only one: to carry the massive sections of aircrafts across Europe quickly and safely. The Beluga had features that no other cargo plane in the world could offer. Speaking of size, the Beluga was 56 meters long, which is about 184 feet, even longer than the length of an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Its height was 17 meters, equal to a 7-story building. The cargo area inside the Beluga was so big that you could fit 182 Suzuki Alto cars inside without a problem. The most special part was its nose section, which could lift upwards just like the hood of a car. This made loading and unloading of huge airplane parts very simple. For example, the wing pair of an Airbus A350, each 32 meters long, could fit into the Beluga's cargo space perfectly. The cost of one such wing pair is around 40 million euros, equal to nearly 400 crore in value. This means that during the loading process, even the smallest damage could result in losses of millions. That is why extreme care and safety measures were always followed. The Beluga gave Airbus a huge advantage. What previously took months by ship or truck could now be transported in only 2 hours by this special plane. Because of this fast speed, the assembly lines of Airbus no longer faced delays. After this success, in 2014 Airbus introduced an even better version of the Beluga called Beluga XL. It was designed to carry even bigger parts and heavier components. Everything seemed to be going perfectly well, until Airbus launched the world's largest passenger plane, the A380, in 2004. The fuselage of the A380 is 8.4 meters high and the wings near the fuselage have a width of almost 16 meters. This created a new problem. The cargo compartment of Beluga XL was only 7.5 meters high, which meant it could not fit the A380 fuselage or its giant wings. To understand this better, remember that a fuselage is like a cylinder, and it can be divided into separate sections and joined later. But wings cannot be divided because they also contain fuel tanks and hydraulic lines. The wings are the parts that face the most stress when the airplane is in flight, so they must always be manufactured in one solid piece to avoid any weakness or fuel leakage. Airbus engineers thought about making an even larger version of Beluga, called Beluga XXL, but that plan had many issues. They would have to redesign the plane from scratch and increase engine power, which would cost billions of euros. And since the A380 was so big that not many airlines could operate it, its demand was limited. For only a few aircrafts, building Beluga XXL was not practical. So Airbus dropped the idea and started searching for a completely different solution. This was the beginning of the story of the Super Convoy, a ground and water transportation system designed specifically for the A380. Airbus built special roll-on roll-off ships to move large sections easily. The parts could be rolled directly inside using wheeled platforms, and the same method was used to unload them. That is why these ships are called roll-on roll-off, or RRO ships. One of them is named City of Hamburg. It is 126 meters long and 20 meters wide, with cargo space 5 times larger than Beluga XL. From the port of Hamburg, Germany, these massive aircraft sections roll straight into the ship without cranes. The ship then sails to Saint-Nazaire, France, covering 1,600 kilometers. The journey is not simple because the North Sea is known for storms and waves as high as 5 meters. If turbulence causes even a tiny scratch to a wing worth 400 crore, Airbus would have to rebuild the entire wing. Because of this, the captain and crew check the cargo chains every 4 hours and cameras watch the cargo 24/7 to make sure nothing is damaged. Once the ship reaches Saint-Nazaire, the parts are taken off and loaded onto specially designed barges. These barges carry the sections along the Garonne River to the French city of Bordeaux. But here comes one of the biggest challenges of the entire journey. On this river stands the old Pont de Pierre Bridge, constructed in 1810. The arches of this bridge are not uniform in size, and only arch number 9 has a width of 19 meters, just wide enough for the barges to pass. But even then, the gap on both sides is just a few inches. And the height of the arches depends on the level of the water, which is controlled by tides of the Atlantic Ocean, even though the river is 60 kilometers away from the ocean itself. Under normal conditions, the water level is too high, and the barges cannot pass through. But every 12 hours, there is only a 3-minute window during low tide when they can cross. If the captain misses this opportunity, the entire convoy has to wait another 12 hours, delaying the Airbus schedule. To overcome this, the barges were built with adjustable platforms so they could pass even during low tide. This may look like a small detail, but it was extremely important for the success of the transport system. After the river journey, the final stage begins on land. From Bordeaux to Toulouse, there are still 250 kilometers to cover. For this, Airbus designed giant super trucks, each 50 meters long, with 96 wheels and 650 horsepower engines. These trucks move the airplane parts to the assembly unit in Toulouse. But this part of the journey is equally challenging. To avoid traffic, the entire convoy travels only at night. Highways and city streets are closed, and a team of 40 people, including police, escort cars, and engineers, accompany the convoy. The most difficult part is passing through small towns, roundabouts, and narrow streets.